The more NFL players Team X has on their roster, the higher odds Team X has of winning the national championship. This is why the blue chip ratio works so well, because while you can, it's possible, Michigan has done it, develop 3 stars into elite collegiate players and NFL players, it is easier to recruit 4 and 5 star athletes, blue chip players, and develop them from there. Ohio State has one of the most talented, potentially the most talented roster in the country right now. And they have an elite staff that does a great job of developing and putting their players in great positions to win. However, for the defensive line, the linebacker core, the defensive back rooms that are elite, a wide receiver room that once again should be one of the best in the country, and Ohio State's best running back room in quite some time, potentially under the Ryan Day era. J.K. Dobbins was elite, and I don't know if Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins will even come close to his greatness in 2019. But there are 2 elite running backs in Henderson and Judkins. It's quite fascinating and is a huge advantage for Ohio State. There exists the offensive line, but the offensive line returns a lot, so they should get better compared to last year. And then there's the quarterback room, where there is little to no returning production in terms of anyone who started coming back from Ohio State last year. Kyle McCord's off to Syracuse. Will Howard comes in, and there's a rule, not a rule that is permanent, but a rule that's meant to be broken but will be very hard to break. And that rule states that in the college football playoff era, your quarterback must be in the top 10 of quarterback efficiency to win the national championship. And outside of 2017 Alabama and 2018 Clemson with Jalen Hurts and Trevor Lawrence, every quarterback to win a national championship, again outside of those 2, has been top 5 in quarterback efficiency. The last quarterback to be outside of the top 10 in quarterback efficiency, who won it all, was Greg McElroy at Alabama. Talk about a long time ago. That's when I was 7 years old, and Greg McElroy is now one of the better college football analysts and has his own show at ESPN now. His collegiate playing days and NFL days have long passed him. And that was in 2009 when Alabama had an elite defense. They had Mark Ingram, Heisman Trophy winning running back. Greg McElroy was 17th in QBR. Will Howard, who is likely going to be the starter for Ohio State, last year had a 75.1 quarterback efficiency rating, which was 22nd. The prior year, he had an 82.5 quarterback efficiency rating with much more limited snaps, and that would have placed him at 11th in the 2022 QBR ratings, so outside of the top 10, and against Alabama and against TCU in the championship game, the Big 12 championship game, he did not perform like an elite level player. Earlier in the season, against Oklahoma State, against TCU partially, and Baylor, West Virginia, and Kansas, he looked very awesome. But as the season progressed, you began to saw cracks, and last year he had a 24 to 10 TDINT ratio, a 140 passer rating, and look, those numbers, while good, they're not great, they're not near elite, they're not elite. So what I want to do today is talk about Ohio State's quarterback room and stir up a little controversy, because Will Howard may be Ohio State's best option. He likely will be the starter. But what if someone else in the room, if given the opportunity to both succeed and fail, and to gel with the starting roster and to play in some of the more practice squad meaningless-esque games in September that Ohio State will participate in, could there be a quarterback who has a better chance of being an elite player and of being a proven combination of both game manager and playmaker that will maximize Ohio State's chances of winning the national championship? As that's this team's goal. Of course, beating Michigan comes before that. That's this team's biggest goal. But having a quarterback who can take care of the football and make big throws and can be accurate. Will Howard struggles in 2 out of those 3. That would also be very helpful in beating the Wolverines, who should have one of the best defenses in the country and a ground game and offense that will keep Ohio State somewhat honest. Welcome back, everyone. It's College Football with Sam. Before we resume and continue to dive deep on Ohio State's quarterback room, whether it's Will Howard, Devin Brown, Julian Saying, or anyone else in that deep quarterback room, could be the deepest quarterback room in the nation. Make sure to like this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell. All 3 of those things help out the channel tremendously. Our first video of the 2024 season that gets 1,000 likes, I will be doing a giveaway after that. And after we hit 20,000 subscribers, I'll be doing a giveaway as well. So there are 2 giveaways guaranteed that are awaiting you. And hitting the notification bell will help you get notified when I am doing those giveaways. More importantly, it'll help you get notified when I drop game reactions, game previews, more preseason content. We're so close to the regular season, but we still have a little over a month before August 24th when Florida State and Georgia Tech kick off in Dublin, Ireland. So make sure to hit that notification bell. Also, comment your thoughts down below. And liking and subscribing is probably the best things that you can do, along with watching the whole video, to support the channel. First and foremost, where I want to go is Devin Brown. Now, Devin Brown, I start off with him because at this point, watching him in the spring game, seeing that he's injury prone last year, and the fact that he just didn't look that good. He didn't necessarily get a fair shot. Ryan Day, early last year, said that he would give Kyle McCord and Devin Brown split reps. That never really happened after the Indiana game, and then against Youngstown State, he didn't look good. Similar against Western Kentucky. Against Purdue, his QBR was less than 20, which is awful. And when playing against Missouri, he didn't have Marvin Harrison Jr., but he had much of his offensive line. He had Travion Henderson in an elite defense, and before he got hurt, and I hope that he's able to recover, he wasn't able to do much. Nonetheless, he's very athletic. He's 6'3", 212 pounds, and he's been touted by Ohio State coaches, by Ohio State fans, by fellow players, and he was highly recruited out of high school. He was in Drew Aller's class, the 2022 quarterback class, and he was close to a 5-star by season's end, by the end of his high school career. He lost the starting job to Kyle McCord last year. I don't know if he's actually competing for the job this season because, again, it sounds like it's Will Howard, and then there's some buzz around Julian Saying that we'll get to. But this time he has more experience. He has more experience with Ohio State and within Ryan Day's system than Howard does. Then again, there are changes with Chip Kelly coming in and modifying the offense to his tastes. But I think that there will still be elements of Ryan Day's system. After all, it was a system that worked brilliantly for most of, if not all of Ryan Day's time so far at Ohio State. So why not combine the best of both worlds? Some of that experience definitely gives Brown an advantage. He had 217 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick last year. Had a few plays that were just very risky, didn't showcase good decision-making, and QBR takes that into account. Even if you ignore quarterback efficiency rating, he had a sub-140 passer rating, which unless you make that up by rushing for tons of yards on the ground, or maybe you can make big plays and occasional wise decisions through the air, that really shows that you are not a good quarterback, or at least you're not good at passing the football. Right now, Brown is still an unproven raw athlete who has a big arm, a cannon of an arm, who definitely is gutsy and has some mobility. He's similar to Will Howard in a lot of ways, now that I'm saying it, though of course all comparisons are rough because these players have multiple differences. I wouldn't be surprised necessarily if he somehow wins the starting job. And I solely say that as in not surprised because it's very unlikely. I wouldn't pick it. I wouldn't even bet my money on it. But there is no CJ Stroud. There is no Justin Fields. And I don't even really think there's a Kyle McCord. I mean, since the start of last year, it really felt like it was going to be, especially as the season progressed, but in hindsight, really from the beginning, it was going to be Kyle McCord's job. It was. That's why he was backing up CJ Stroud even as a true freshman, and he played against Akron in 2021. He backed him up in 2022. He was going to be the guy, or at least Ryan Day wanted him to be the guy, wanted him to give him a try, and if he really failed, then he may pull him out. With Devin Brown, yes, injuries have held him back. He hasn't looked good, but last year's system and last year's performance and efficiency, to his credit, was an abject disaster. With the amount of talent that Ohio State had, they should have been scoring in the high 30s, low 40s. Even with all the turnover they suffered, their offense was not even top 25, top 30 in scoring. And it was barely at that point, even before the Cotton Bowl game against the Missouri Tigers in that 14-3 loss. I want to talk about the other two quarterbacks, but before I can get to that, I want to show you and bring your attention to my Patreon page. Many of you have probably heard about it, but if you are a new viewer, trust me, there's some stuff in here that you are going to want to at least check out. I have a public article right now on my Patreon page that discusses the 2023 Michigan versus Ohio State game and some controversial opinions about that game in hindsight. Why Ryan Day called a good game, and also why Michigan probably should have performed either better in that game, and that's really a rough translation of they should have beaten Ohio State by more. But Ohio State played a great game against Michigan last year, and they're favored to beat Michigan this year, and as of now, I'm picking them to beat Michigan this year. So if you want to check out that article, it's for free. Just visit my Patreon page via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. If you want to see part 2 to that article, and then part 3, and those will release in really the following week, 10 days at the latest, sign up as a Heisman or All-American member for $25 and $10 a month, respectively. If you just want to have your name shown in the middle and end of the video with a shout out at the end, you can sign up as an all-conference member for $5 a month if you just want to support the channel without gaining anything extra in return. Gaining extra things in return requires the All-American membership or the Heisman membership. With the Heisman membership, you gain access to me through messages, and after 6 months of membership, you receive free signed College Football with Sam merchandise of your choosing. Speaking of which, you can visit my merchandise store via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Any of that merchandise that you see in my merchandise store, after 6 months of Heisman membership, you get it for free, and you get it signed. Again, one item of your choosing, and that's what you get with my signature. If you just want to skip that whole process and purchase merchandise, you can visit my store and you can get an Ohio State themed College Football with Sam t-shirt, a Michigan, Penn State, USC, Oregon themed, or any of the 18 Big Ten teams. Their theme is paired with a College Football with Sam t-shirt. You can get sweaters in a black or white color, a plain black or white t-shirt with the College Football with Sam logo. You can even get a mug if that's your thing. But if you can check out my Patreon and merchandise pages, I would greatly appreciate it, even if you aren't interested in purchasing anything. Just checking them out and seeing for yourself would be a good idea, in my opinion. Now let's get back to the quarterback room. And I want to talk about Julian Saying before I get to Will Howard, or really circle back to Will Howard. We already talked about him a bit. Julian Saying, in my mind, is the most intriguing member of this quarterback room because there is a part of me, I confess, that thinks that he gives Ohio State the best chance to win the Big Ten, beat Michigan, and win the national championship. And then there's another part of me that thinks it's very rare that a true freshman can come out and just ball in his first year in college, especially with the schedule that Ohio State plays, the defenses that they face, and the pressure that will be on his shoulders. Think about this. Ohio State will play Iowa. They will play Oregon. They will play Nebraska, Penn State, Michigan. Half of their schedule, 2/3 of their conference schedule, will be teams that have top 10 potentially defenses. All 5 of those teams could possibly have top 10 defenses. So to circle back, it's a little under 2/3 of their conference schedule, a little less than half of their schedule, but very close. And most of those games are bunched close together. Iowa happens, then Oregon, then a bye, then Nebraska, and Penn State. They could face 4 top 10 defenses in a row. Defenses that in Nebraska and Iowa are stingy. They're used to playing with bad offenses, and if those offenses improve, those defenses are going to be better than anyone expected. And defenses in Oregon and Penn State that should have good offenses. It's a question of whether Kotelnicki's or Stein's offense will be just good, great, or if it can be elite. Penn State's will bring the pass rush. Iowa's will force turnovers and interceptions. Nebraska's will stop the run. And Oregon's has probably the deepest roster, where if they have an injury or if Ohio State's tiring them out, they can rotate and they can try more things to fix any bleeding they may suffer. All the defenses that Ohio State plays will have their own set of advantages. And then there's Michigan's, who has some questions in the secondary, but overall should be great there. They used the portal well at linebacker and have developed well there, and they should have the nation's best defensive line. Or if Ohio State has a better D-line than Michigan, Michigan will have the best defensive line that Ohio State faces in the regular season. That will have a great pass rush, will have an elite run defense, could have an elite pass rush as well. And that'll be a big challenge for Ohio State's offense to face, as will those other defenses. And pitting a freshman quarterback, a true freshman quarterback, to challenge those defenses and to read them and to dissect them and to beat them is very tough. But Sayin was a 5-star out of high school. He is being coached by Chip Kelly. He has one of the best receiver corps in the country, a run game that if the offensive line is greatly improved and not just improved or slightly improved, they'll have a ground attack that'll be vicious, the Buckeyes will, that can take some pressure off of him, that can help him open up the passing game with play action. And in his senior year in high school, 25 touchdowns, 1 pick, 2,347 passing yards, and a few rushing yards and a few rushing touchdowns to chip in. That to me reads like Dylan Raiola, in the sense that there's upside there, there's accuracy, there's football IQ, there's a strong arm, and complete lack of turnovers. His scouting report compared him to JJ McCarthy, except I imagine that you don't have the same mobility, but you probably in Sayin get better accuracy out of high school, and I'd imagine also more pocket awareness, but you maybe lose out on some of the, and this is just me speculating because it's very hard to make some of the crossbody throws and some of the lucid mobility or the looseness that McCarthy had last year that benefited him. But McCarthy in his freshman year and sophomore year didn't necessarily have the accuracy required of an elite quarterback, nor the pocket awareness. He had those things last year. Sayin is better at those things out of high school, in my opinion, than McCarthy is, but is he ready to step up and be Ohio State's starting quarterback? I think he has the highest upside, but that doesn't necessarily answer my question, because he could have a much lower floor than Will Howard, potentially an even lower floor than Devin Brown. And with an offensive line that has questions, Ohio State won't just be able to run for 60 or 55% of the time and maximize their offensive success. They can't do what Michigan has done, in my opinion, and they won't be able to do and shouldn't, let's say, what PJ Fleck and Minnesota have done. That's not a strategy for Ohio State's roster to maximize their potential to win. They have receivers that Michigan and, again, particularly Minnesota have never had and potentially will never have, at least as a collection and unit depth from that perspective. And Howard has a better rushing threat. So maybe you can answer this question in the comments below what you think, but there's a big part of me that thinks he will be the starting quarterback. And I think it would be wise of Ryan Day, regardless if he thinks that Howard is the guy or not, to where in those first games in the schedule, I mean, seriously, Ohio State does no longer have a Notre Dame in the non-conference. against Southern Miss, Western Michigan, maybe Marshall, or maybe this whole thing wants to close up during the first bye week. In those 2 to 3 games, and if Ohio State's really confident, they can try it against Michigan State, maybe even against Iowa, but that's cutting it close. You have kind of an open quarterback competition. You have what Dabo Swinney did with Trevor Lawrence, and I forget who the other guy's name was. I think Bryant. He transferred to Missouri after the 2018 season when he got beat out. And I shouldn't be forgetting his name, but there's just so many names to remember. In fact, it annoys me that I can't remember his name, so I'm just going to look it up. Oh, Kelly Bryant. Yeah, so I got his last name correct. As much as I would nowadays almost never advise a coach to do what Dabo Swinney does, this is an exception to that. Have that open competition in 2, 3, 4, maybe the first 5 games. And with the defense that Ohio State has, there's plenty of cushion. Have Sayin, have Brown, and Will Howard go out there and see who gels with the team the best, see who the team thinks is the best, and work from there. Now let's talk about Will Howard. Let's get back around to the graduate transfer coming in from Kansas and someone who is favored right now to win the Ohio State starting quarterback job. Will Howard, he's the most proven out of all of these players in Ohio State's quarterback room. He's widely expected to be the starting quarterback for that reason. 27 career starts. He fits Chip Kelly's system with his dual threat ability, his power running ability, not just picking up big chunks of yards, but also being able to power through and break tackles and take risks. And also the fact that as a passer, he has a strong arm and at times has shown that he can be accurate. In 2023, he had 2,643 yards passing, 24 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. And in 2022, he had 1,423 passing yards in the regular season, 1,633 after what was a bad game against Alabama, 15 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions. On the ground, he only had 22 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Last year on the ground, he had 351 yards and 9 touchdowns. He had very good offensive lines at Kansas State with Cooper Beebe and a very veteran group both last year and in 2022. So that's something else to pay attention to is how does he do with Ohio State's offensive line? Because maybe it is as good as Kansas State's last year, but Kansas State had a very good offensive line full of NFL players. And given Ohio State's performance on the offensive line last season and some of the vulnerabilities they showed again in the spring game, which you can only take a grain of salt from that, but it was a little bit concerning. How does he fit? How does he work in if the offensive line is different in a worse way than when he was at Kansas State? He'll certainly have better wide receivers. Tight end, Sinnott was a beast at K-State, so I think there'll be regression there. And he had Deuce Vaughn and then DJ Giddens, so he's familiar with working with great running backs. So he does in many ways fit the scheme at Ohio State and is familiar with having talent surrounding him. I mean, Kansas State's offenses were good under Chris Kleiman and Colin Klein. They were very underrated offenses. And I say that both as an encouragement to Ohio State fans, because Howard fits the scheme and he knows how to succeed under geniuses, but also as a cautionary tale that if Ohio State's offense is not totally in sync, Will Howard could also look exactly like he did last year, and Ohio State's offense could be performing at a Kansas State level, which would be good, would be great, but at Ohio State, just being great or good isn't Ohio State's good. Ohio State's good is being top 10, more likely with the talent they have and the reputation Ryan Day has built, top 5, if not number 1 in the country. And he's had turnover problems. He has. And that's even with good tight ends, good receivers, an offensive coordinator that, well, was hired by Texas A&M and by Mike Elko to help the Aggies finally win the SEC. Even with that caliber of an OC, Will Howard still struggled. Threw 3 picks last year against an Oklahoma State secondary that was trash. Struggled against Southeast Missouri, against Troy, throwing a pick in each of those games, going 0 touchdowns passing, 1 interception against UCF. Had a great game on the ground, great game otherwise outside of passing the football. And against Iowa State and against Kansas, he wasn't exactly in those games the reason why Kansas State won. His best performances last year were against Texas late in the game, and Texas did have a pretty terrible secondary. He also did well against Missouri, who had an admirable defense. And in 2022, bad performance against an Alabama team that could have competed in the playoffs, beat TCU once, lost to them again in the, not again, but lost to them once in the regular season. Did admirably against Oklahoma State, very well in that game, blew out Baylor, great against West Virginia, all right against Kansas. And in both TCU games, he was a great player. So you see a lot of up and down with him. There's definitely the upside, but there's also some of those consistent concerns. Really what describes Will Howard is a gutsy quarterback with a cannon for an arm who's not afraid to take risks, and probably should be more afraid to take some of the risks, but shouldn't be terrified of taking risks. Like, let's say, I think maybe Kyle McCord or even Ryan Day himself in some instances. He is tough, and he's underrated in terms of speed when it comes to scrambling for a quarterback his size. Will Howard was 6'4", 237 pounds, and he talked about how he's trying to slim down, have more lean body mass, and just be a more NFL-ready quarterback. So there could be improvements and more development underway with Will Howard, which is encouraging. Overall, there's many good options for Ohio State to choose from. I think the 2 best by a mile are obviously Howard and Sayin. Devin Brown has a lot of questions, but he has the talent, so if he can stay healthy and be developed properly, he could break through too. So with Day being a full-time CEO, I've heard that he's been much less involved in the quarterback room. He's not as close to them. He's not meeting with them as often. This is now Chip Kelly's offense. It is. And Chip Kelly is going to manage this the way that he wants to. And Chip Kelly last year wasn't afraid to switch quarterbacks, whether it was Dante Moore, and then he abandoned Dante Moore for Ethan Garbers and put in Colin Schlee a little bit here as kind of a wrinkle in the offense. You could see that with Devin Brown. Just kind of, if Will Howard gets tired or his legs are a little banged up, you could see Devin Brown still be a wrinkle in a sense with moving the football, scrambling, maybe some quarterback sneaks or short quarterback runs. I think Chip Kelly will run this offense. He'll be more objective, as Ryan Day to me seems like a person that I'd want to be a friend with, that I'd want to take advice from. Ryan Day, I think, is a very good person, and that's good, but while I don't necessarily think this is true, there have been people who have said that he needs to look at things more objectively and be more cutthroat. So if those people are correct at that, the Chip Kelly hiring, I think, will be even more of an improvement because you'll have a second set of eyes in the offense because you know that Day will still be involved, not to the same degree, but offense is his thing, and he'll want to make sure it's ran properly, and him and Kelly go way back. So they're going to be in constant communication. I think that Howard and Brown make the most sense in the system, but Sayin's potential is too big to ignore, and if this were still Day's offense and Day was calling plays, Sayin would make the most sense by a mile. It wouldn't even be close, because Sayin has that pro-style quarterback build that CJ Stroud had, but with enough athleticism to where he could take off and make plays, or like what we saw with Stroud against Georgia, you can use his underrated athleticism against defenses when they least expect it. So I don't necessarily have an answer of who's the best for the job. I think it's going to be either Howard or Sayin, and I'm split there. I think that really with Will Howard, you know what you have in him, and you've seen him perform against defenses. The Big 12 isn't exactly known for elite defensive play, but you've seen him perform well and have good games and you know what you're getting. And you also know, if you're on Ohio State staff or a fan, that his supporting cast and his team and roster is making a giant leap forward from Kansas State to Ohio State. I think, and maybe this is a moot point, but whoever has the best combination of talent, toughness, ball security, and pocket awareness should and will win the starting job. I think that Sayin has the talent, and out of high school, you can't really tell what else he has, but I would say that ball security and pocket awareness are more likely than toughness, just because it does take time to get adjusted to the differences and superiority of the college game compared to the high school game. Howard definitely has the toughness, and I would say the pocket awareness with all the veterancy that he has. And Brown, I'd say talent, toughness, and really the ball security is the biggest question with Will Howard and also Devin Brown. Ironically, the ones who fit Chip Kelly's system. For Sayin, it's that he's very, very young, and that comes with its own red flags. Thank you very much for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Subscribe to my Patreon page or purchase merchandise at my merchandise store via the links in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Thanks to Crash2488 and Braska Rascal for being Heisman members and sponsoring this video and channel. Thanks to Chris Lane, Connor OH, and Ismar for being All-American members and sponsoring this video and channel. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Janisha Cockrell for being All-American, or All-Conference members, pardon me, and sponsoring this video and channel. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.